Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Ray Petree, and I'm a columnist for the Augusta Free Press. And I'm joined once again by my co-host, my tag team partner, the Arn Anderson, and my Tully Blanchard, JDO Double G. How's it going, sir?
Going good, man. Going good. Got an exciting little concept today.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about recently the young stars in wrestling, and particularly the guys who are below 35. Conventionally speaking, a men's wrestler reaches their prime at about 37 years old. And AEW repackaging this main event picture and building a new core of guys to challenge for that World Heavyweight Championship, and maybe WWE's lack of attention to that side of their men's roster. I had this great idea: who would be the best 10 wrestlers in the men's and women's wrestling in 5 years? So in the year 2030, who are the top 10 wrestlers going to be on the men's and women's side of things? We're looking at this from an international perspective. And this is my list. This is not representative of Jordan's opinions. I'm going to give Jordan a list, uh, a cold copy, and we're going to get his reaction to the list. Um, like I said, international perspective. So this is WWE, AEW, uh, CMLL, AAA, New Japan, Noah, Stardom, Marigold, all over the world. Obviously the American independent scene, whatever it may be. We're looking at everything. Um, so before we begin, Jordan, do you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to privy the viewers to about my wrestling acumen and maybe if I am or if I'm not a good judge of this.
Uh, yeah, I mean, no, you're definitely more well versed with like the overall scope of wrestling as far as like outside of WWE, AEW, and stuff like that. I mean, you're kind of all over the place as opposed to me. Mine's a little bit limited to more of like the mainstream type of stuff. So yeah, I think this will have a um good overall list for both divisions.
Before we begin, um, if you don't want to watch this on YouTube, if having the video open is cumbersome, we are available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music, as well as a few other places where you can find podcasts. Um, Please like the video, leave us a comment. Uh, do you agree with my list? Do you not? Uh, who did I miss? Um, who did I have too high? Who did I have too low? I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. Um, I think Jordan is a good barometer of wrestling and someone who I often agree with, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes we're really far apart on things. So I think I'm happy to bounce this off of him. I'm excited. So let's begin with number 10 on the men's wrestler side of things. At number 10, I have Kazuchika Okada, currently with AEW. And in 5 years, he'll be 42 years old, which is kind of on the far extreme of a wrestler in their prime. I think that's kind of reaching maybe the end of a wrestler's prime or his apex. But Okada's not someone who's predicated on his athleticism. He's a great counter wrestler, someone who's great psychology, and someone who, as a character, is pretty flexible. He can be on the spectrum of being a heel, being a serious heel, or a sort of a comical one, which is what he's evolved into in a way. Um, but he can also be a great babyface. And someone who I think even in 5 years will still be a big star. And I think definitely once he releases those handcuffs from the Young Bucks and the Elite and becomes sort of an entity unto himself like he was in New Japan, I think he's destined to hold that AEW World Championship. And I think maybe eventually he'll hold the IWGP Championship in New Japan again. So, um, any thoughts? Obviously, you don't know the rest of the list yet, but just what do you think about Okada?
I mean, obviously, I'm a big Okada fan. From his New Japan days, I have not liked a lot of what he's done in AEW, and if like you said, he is unshackled from the the weights that are the Young Bucks, and he gets to be his own man, and he gets to be sort of like an Undertaker type of presence in AEW, where in WWE it was the gong, in AEW it could be the coin drop, and stuff's about to go down. So if you can get to that point with Okada, then yeah, I think this will definitely be a good spot, provided that it happens. And there's no guarantee that it will, but hopefully it does. So yeah, it's a good spot.
Yeah, I'd like to think at this point there's nowhere to go but up for him, because I think the booking is about as bad as it could be for him right now, and he's still the Continental Champion and prime for a big spot at All In, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Number nine, Konosuke Takeshita, who currently works for AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and DDT. He's the current never openweight champion in New Japan and stalwart presence in AEW. Someone who is tremendous talent. He's only 35, or he will be 35 years old in 2030. He just turned 30 2 days ago, actually. So um, Konosuke Takeshita, I think, is one of the most wildly talented figures in wrestling. I think, unfortunately, in a lot of respects, his talent is limited in America because of the language barrier. But I imagine that within the next 5 years, he's going to continue working in New Japan at a steady rate. And I would not be surprised if at some point he holds the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. I think that's, if he were in Japan, I think he would be the undisputed focus of any company he was in. I think if he was in New Japan right now, he'd be the ace of that company, but he splits his time in AEW, and DDT. But 5 years is a lot of time, and I believe in him wholeheartedly, both as a babyface and as a heel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, kind of laid it all out there for him. I think the language barrier is one of the things that really has kind of held him back, and kind of required him to have a mouthpiece like Don Callis. Um, and I do think because of the way that the Don Callis family is structured, they have so many guys, and I think he can kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. He definitely has his moments where he stands out as one of the clear cut best guys there. Uh, but yeah, I think hopefully if they can figure out a way around that language barrier in AEW, I think that'll really help him. New Japan obviously does it wouldn't matter, but and he'll become a huge star there. I think like you said, holding the IWGP Heavyweight Championship eventually. But yeah, this is a good spot. Um, there's a lot more guys to come, but if circumstances lay out properly, he might be a candidate to be higher on this list. But as things stand right now, yeah, I think this is a good spot.
Yeah, I think Shinsuke Nakamura proved that aura is a universal language, and he has it. And I mean, for those keeping score, in New Japan, I mean, I think, from my understanding, his Japanese and his delivery and his psychology, I think a lot of people consider him one of the better talkers in New Japan, because he's just a charismatic guy. Um, Number eight, Kyle Fletcher, currently a member of the Don Callis family.
Whoa.
Kyle Fletcher will be 31 years old in 5 years. The same age currently as Will Ospreay, I believe, or thereabout. I'm hesitant to put Kyle Fletcher higher because I think currently, as things stand in the Don Callis family, he's either 1B to Konosuke Takeshita's 1A, or he's number two in the hierarchy of that faction. It's going to take him time to transcend that. And then how many, how much, how many main events is he going to be in between now and then when you have the main event picture that they currently do? I think there's a ceiling there at present for him to move up. But he hasn't even held a mid card title in AEW yet. But I think as a heel and as a babyface, he has all the potential in the world. If this were a list made in 10 years, I think he'd be at number one. I genuinely, sincerely believe that. But in the next 5 years, or in 5 years, I think he's going to be number eight.
I think this is our going to be my first disagreement. I think he should be higher. I mean, you look at he's got everything you could want in a wrestler right now. He's a good talker. He's got an insane look, and he's a really good wrestler. And that's all of those types of things that you would want. Um, and I think you look at kind of some of the other guys here, and as those guys get older, you're going to really have to start giving the younger guys more opportunities, more title reigns and things like that. I think those are going to come for him. It's pretty clear that AEW and Tony Khan have a lot of faith in Kyle Fletcher, and I think that even if even in 5 years, we've seen how drastically things can change in just a year's time, and you give him 5 years with everything he's got going for him right now, the momentum that he has. I think eventually he will get away from the Don Callis family and break out on his own. And I think he's going to be really, really good. And I would have him higher, I think, on this list.
Well, I'll gladly be wrong. If I am wrong, I would be happy to be wrong because I'm a big Cal Fletcher fan. If this were the stock market, I would invest heavily in
Yeah.
the Protostar. But
As long as he doesn't almost kill Adam Cole again, I think he'll be okay.
as a quick aside, he slams Adam Cole in the back of his head. Supposedly, the dirt sheets say that Cal Fletcher has a lot of heat for potentially injuring Adam Cole. Clearly, he didn't, or I don't think Adam Cole would have continued the match or attacked him in a post-match angle.
Yeah.
But why doesn't Adam Cole have heat for ruining two huge storylines in his AEW career by being injured because he's made of porcelain? And I'm not asking for a rebuttal. I just want to throw that out in the ether. Maybe Adam Cole needs a little heat for being perpetually injured uh, and built like maybe a little bit more like a branch than a twig, but nonetheless, not definitely not the trunk. Anyways, number 7 on this list, the Switchblade Jay White, who will be 37 years old in 2030. That means he is right in his apex. Switchblade Jay White may be my favorite guy on the microphone in wrestling today. I've talked about this a lot, and it's hard for me to really articulate, but there's something about his cadence, his delivery, and his energy that really excites me. And it's something I try to emulate when I'm podcasting, ever so slightly, if that's possible. But uh, Switchblade Jay White is, I think, up there with Okada is the best counter wrestler in professional wrestling. He reminds me a lot of a young Randy Orton in that he can work with anyone, anyone's pace, anyone's speed. He sells well. He has great psychology in the ring. Um, I'm hesitant to put him higher because, for one, he is injured. Barely. I mean, he has been injured quite a few times over the last few years, but he's a former IWGP champion, a two-time IWGP champion, and I think that he's destined to win this AW championship. He is slotted in so well with those top guys. He has a pre-existing rivalry with Will Ospreay, obviously with MJF and Darby Allin, a pre-existing rivalry with Hangman that recently resurfaced at the end of last year and early 2025. I just think in 5 years he's going to be at the top of his game and one of the best guys in the world. And whether that's with AEW or not, I don't know, but I think he has that potential.
Yeah, I mean, I like Switchblade a lot too, and I think the injuries are an issue, um, because those injuries can tend to pile up, um, and you never want that. And especially when you kind of start building momentum, and then you get hurt and it halts all that momentum. Um, and two, I feel like they don't. He's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit in certain spots. He had that feud with MJF where I kind of felt like that was really a good opportunity for them to really push Jay White. You know, the MJF title reign was kind of flailing a little bit, and I felt like that would have been a good reset, and they didn't pull the trigger on it. And I don't know if that's because of a lack of belief in Jay White, if it was just a bad decision, don't know. But again, I think I would slot Kyle Fletcher ahead of him right now, just because Kyle Fletcher, obviously he's younger, and um, it just seems like they have a lot of faith in Kyle Fletcher, and they've put a lot of into him. Whereas Switchblade's been there for a little bit, and he's just kind of floated around a little bit. He hasn't really gotten that shine yet. So I like Switchblade a lot too. I hope I hope he has the opportunity to really prove what he can do. But I think right now I would have Kyle Fletcher ahead of him.
Um, to his credit, Jay White's credit, this is the guy that beat Adam Page at Wrestle Dream and in Full Gear. Uh, two consecutive singles victories. I think Hangman has only beaten him once in the entirety of their career, and they've had quite a few matches. And if we're to believe that Hangman Page is the next champion and that Jay White has this overwhelming advantage over him, I think that goes to show that they have a lot of belief in him and they have big plans for him in the future. This is also the guy that beat Darby Allin and took Sting's bat and painted it gold. This is the guy that beat Swerve Strickland in the first Continental Classic. And it's one of the only people that Swerve has not beaten in AEW that he's had matches against. So I think the faith is there. But in any event, oh, and also he's ran roughshod with Will Ospreay in their careers. So uh, to be fair, but moving on, Gunter, WWE potentially maybe in 5 years he'll still be with WWE. At 42 years old, Gunter's ability does not lie in his athletic prowess, but in his psychology, in his physicality, and in his ability to use moderation. Gunter is, I would say, the best wrestler in the ring that WWE has right now, maybe save Chad Gable. But Gunter's ability is tremendous, and I think by this time in 5 years he'll be um, a multiple time world champion and one of the more well respected guys in that company, as a heel, of course. Um, what do you think about the ring general, Jordan?
Well, I'm a big Gunther fan. No, no question about that. And my opinion on this is not based on my lack of faith in Gunther as a wrestler, as a character, as a worker, any of that. My opinion on this is going to be based on the company that he works for. And as we've seen lately, he has just been absolutely buried on television. He loses at WrestleMania to Jey Uso, gets choked out, and then he has to wrestle a commentator at Backlash. And I feel like WWE right now, based on the direction their booking is going, it's really bad. And I don't have any faith in Triple H booking the men's division in WWE. So I would have him lower just because of that. I feel like if he's still in WWE in 5 years' time, then it's not gonna be great for him. Maybe he'll have some other world title reigns, but it just doesn't feel like he's gonna be. It doesn't feel like he's as valued in WWE as he once was, and I don't think that's anything on his part. I feel like that's solely bad booking. So I would have a couple of these guys ahead of him just because of that, just because of the fact that you have um, a lot better booking direction by Tony Khan in AEW when it comes to the men's roster. We talked about it at length about the stable of guys that they've built up to contend for that world title. And in WWE, they're more interested in pushing celebrities and having Travis Scott get in the ring and punch Cody Rhodes. So I think Gunther should be lower on this list solely because of the company that he worked for.
Fair enough. I just think that in 5 years, you're going to have a lot of the top guys that are currently there phase out, and he's going to be one of the guys that are left, is a lot of my sense in this. But totally understandable.
Yeah.
Number five on my list.
Well, but before we move on though, to that point, who else is he going to go against? Who else do they have in
Well,
5 years after the old regime phases out?
uh, Trick Williams, Ricky Starks, Dominic Mysterio, Carmelo Hayes, Miles Bourne. I think Javon Evans will be in the main roster by then in a pretty big force. I mean, they're guys, but they're not of the ilk of a Roman Reigns or a Seth Rollins. I mean, I think Seth will still be there probably. I think Sami Zayn will probably still be there. Guys like a Drew McIntyre will still be there. Um, but yeah, that's what I mean. I just think Gunter will dominate a lot of that presence in the WWE. And I mean, listen, we're 5 spots into this list, and no, it's the first WWE guy. So what does that say about the time he's going to be devouring in that company. I assume. I mean, and here's the other thing. I mean, he might leave, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
the
No, I mean, if
AEW money is real, and it's a wrestling style that is more akin to what he enjoys.
yeah,
I feel like, and he'd be great against a lot of those opponents. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, any of these guys could maybe be somewhere else in 5 years. We don't know, but if he's still in WWE, I think he's going to be. I think his pedigree is going to be higher than a lot of other guys in that company.
yeah. I think when you were naming off the potential guys for WWE, I think that kind of proved my point because Trick Williams, current TNA World Champion, has been in perpetually in NXT. All those other guys, like nobody really knows who they are if you don't watch NXT. So, if you're naming all those guys off, and I'm like, why would Gunther have any problem beating any of those guys? I mean, if you're Gunther, and I said it before, I would love to see Gunther in AEW. Never thought I would say those words before. But if things keep going on the trend that they're going right now in WWE, I don't see what benefit it would be to him to stay. Because, like you said, AEW is paying good money. And, yeah, they're not going out and, you know, selling out these big football stadiums. But, and again, 5 years, that could change. And we could have a whole other type of argument right now between WWE and AEW because AEW is hot right now. I know if you listen to a lot of the older heads, they'll tell you no, they're not, but they are. There's a lot of momentum behind them. They're going to these smaller venues, and they look great on television, and they have a really good roster. So yeah, I just think WWE is just so down right now on their men's roster. The future is kind of bleak for a lot of those guys outside of maybe three that I would be excited to see. So yeah, I think that for Gunter, unless he leaves, I just don't see how he's going to be in a better spot than some of the guys we've already named.
All fair points. Number five on this list, Swerve Strickland, who will be 39 years old in 2030 at this time of the year. Swerve Strickland is someone who right now is positioned as high as anyone in the company, actively. Someone who is constantly going to be in that world championship picture, will undoubtedly hold it again, if not once more, multiple times, by 2030. And at 39 years old, that's the same age as Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes right now. Um, that's the zenith of a wrestler's career in all likelihood. And I think he's going to be at the peak of his powers and a dominant force in that company should he choose to stay, which I think he will. What are your thoughts on the Swerve, Jordan?
I have really warmed up to Swerve a lot over the last, I don't know, a year or two. Um, I think he's kind of got that aura that we talk about with wrestlers. He's clearly been positioned as a main event guy and as somebody who should be respected when it comes to the AEW World Title picture. And also outside of AEW, he is a really big advocate for them. He is on a lot of the promotional stuff for them. He was one of the main guys promoting All in Texas, and I think he has a lot of that pop culture presence to him, and when as far as connections to to music and things like that. The only thing I would be concerned about for Swerve is that he is one of those guys who doesn't really he's throws caution to the wind as far as his body goes, as we saw by him getting his tongue stapled, um, and other things that they've done in like that hardcore format. So that would be my concern with him is that when you wrestle a style like that and you're not afraid to throw caution to the wind, that can sometimes shorten a career. And that's really, I think, the main concern I would have for him in 5 years. What is his body going to be? How is he going to hold up to that? Now it seems like he's held up so far, but as you get older, your body doesn't, you just build up those miles and you build up, those bumps take a toll and they add up. And we've seen it really come on quick with guys. Um, so that'd be the only concern I have for Swerve. Outside of that, he's got everything else he would need to be a big star in 5 years. So even if maybe his work, isn't as good, I think he'll still be a top guy. So I think five is a good spot for him.
Yeah, and he's a guy who could really move up or down this list. I imagine that in 5 years, the matches he'll have against the likes of, I'm sure he'll wrestle Hangman Page again multiple times. I'm sure he'll wrestle MJF, Will Ospreay more. I think of a guy like Switchblade Jay White. I think he's going to work with. I think Darby Allin, a guy he can continue working with, and his flexibility. He can do huge stadium main event matches. He can do hardcore things, highly athletic affairs. A smash mouth match against a guy like a Hangman. He's just got so much. Um, Still at his age, even with all that he's accomplished and the aura he has as a champion and a main eventer, he has so much upside still. And I think, like you said, he is older than some of the other guys that I just mentioned. So, will those miles accrue and will his body continue cooperating? I hope so. And I guess that's kind of a standing deal with any of these guys is, wild things can happen. You hope not, but it's wrestling and it's a strange game. And also just in sports, the body is what it is. Sometimes it can be fragile and sometimes it's not. Um, Number four on this list, a personal favorite of yours, Braun Breaker, who will be 32
Oh,
years old
okay.
in 2030. Braun Breaker, while I still think that he has a lot of limits in the ring, and certainly on the microphone, although he is very good at both. Um, I think by 2030, he'll have seceded from Seth Rollins. He'll probably still be with Paul Heyman as his advocate, and he's going to be a galaxy devouring monster. And I think by that point, he will be the undisputed top guy of the WWE. What do you think, Jordan?
Uh, I don't know, man. It's hard because I want to say he's higher on this list just because of he seems like that next big guy that WWE is going to invest in, and they have the promotional structure to do it. Um, but I also say four, I think, is a good spot because of the limits WWE, because of the limits I put on Gunter, because of the talent around him and the direction that the company is going booking wise. I mean, he's been a big guy on the roster, and he had his Intercontinental title run as a single, just him, and it didn't really go anywhere. Now, I don't think that's for a lack of talent on his part. I think, again, it goes back to bad booking. And I think, again, that's going to hold anybody in WWE back because of just the right now where the company's going booking wise. Just I don't foresee good things in that department. So while I want to put him higher because of the fact I think he's going to be the guy, the main guy there in 5 years, I just where WWE is going with the overall structure of the roster and how they're doing things with these matches and storylines, I think four is probably a good spot.
Uh, excuse me. At 32 years old, he has a lot of time to improve. Now, like I said, if this was a list in 10 years, in 2035, I think maybe he'd be number one or number two on that list. But at 32 years old, he still has a lot of room for improvement. Um, so I think that's a fair spot for him. And also maybe there aren't a lot of guys. I think in 5 years you look at the list of guys he's going to be able to work with, and I don't think it's going to be a very strong list. But number three, Hangman Adam Page. Um, I- to an extent, I think a lot of this is dependent on what happens in the next 2 months. And I don't mean in terms of like if he doesn't win the title, he's going to be lower. But if he does win the title, I think he could be a lot higher on this list. In 2030, he'll be 38 years old. And I think Hangman Adam Page is arguably the most well-rounded wrestler in the world right now. And I also think that he's, as a character, someone who portrays a character who is able to evoke emotion, the best in men's wrestling right now, bar none. I don't think anyone is even close. His innate ability to make you feel a certain way and to understand how he feels at a level of depth that is incomprehensible. Hangman Adam Page is a storyteller at his core and someone who does it in the ring, on the microphone, with his facial expressions, backstage, and in his private life. Um, right now, he's the quintessential professional wrestler to me. And if it weren't for the fact that he's already 33 years old, and I find it really hard to believe he's going to improve a lot because I think he's kind of maximized his ability. I think the only difference is that he can improve his stature in terms of how many titles he can accrue and the matches he can have against the likes of Will Ospreay or Swerve Strickland or MJF or Kyle Fletcher. Or, I mean, I think in 5 years, his catalog is going to be even larger than it is now. But I put him at number three. What do you think?
Um, I disagree. I think he is a guy who should be probably number one on this list. Now, obviously, we still got two spots to go, two more guys to go. Um, so well, I'll see who you have picked for that. But I just, like you said, he's the most well-rounded guy in the company. And if you'd asked me this a year ago, I probably would have said he was too high. But the whole genesis of his character and what he's been doing since then has really been great. And I think he is he's kind of taken that heart and soul of AEW role. He's kind of that guy who the fans can always get behind. And obviously, if it had not been for the issues that he had had with Punk and how that whole situation went down, I think he would be a lot bigger than he is now. But he kind of had to build himself back up from that, and I think he's done a great job with that. I think the Tony Khan's done a great job with that, building him back up to be that guy that the fans want to cheer for, and they want him to win. And I think if they do pull the trigger and have him win the title, then I think he's in for a long title reign, and deservedly so because his last one was cut short. So I think he's a guy who should be number one on this list. I don't see anybody else, and I have an idea of who's coming up, but I just think he's such a well-rounded guy. You can't not have him at the very least number two.
All valid points. And being at 38 years old, he's going to be at the apex of his career, at the peak of his powers. Presumably, he will only get better, even if I don't think it can be as much as some of the other guys on this list. But I think he will improve. And by 38 years old, I think he will have at least one more title reign under his belt and a lot of great matches and have developed into one of the best characters in wrestling history. Um, Number two on this list. And like you said, I mean, I think if you're a wrestling fan, you probably figured out who the top two are. Um, Maxwell, Jacob Friedman, MJF at number two. Um, Currently with AEW, now in 5 years, will that change? Tough to say. I think it's possible. I think of anyone on this list who could jump, I think the most likely would be him. But MJF is, I think, the best talker in the world. I'd put him above the likes of CM Punk because I've seen him go toe to toe on the microphone with CM Punk. I'd put him up there with anyone. On the microphone, he is as good as they've ever been. In the ring, he is great. Not good, not very good, great. MJF is a great worker. And in 5 years, he'll be 34 years old, not quite in his prime. But I'll say this, and I firmly believe this. I talked to Steve Johnson, and Steve Johnson said that he likens MJF to a firework that goes up and you expect the big explosion, the grand finale, and it comes back down. And it's a dud. And I'm not willing to write MJF off yet. I think MJF is at a strange point in his life where he's not quite the brightest rising star in wrestling, but he's not quite actualized yet. It's not like late 70s Flair becoming 81 Flair where he's the world champion. He has not reached that impasse yet. And I don't know. Well, actually, I do have an idea of what's caused that problem. I could we could trace it back to a man named Adam Cole and the travesty that was his world championship reign and the transition of power that never took place, him never getting a true story there. And I think I think you could trace that back to multiple places. I think he was destined to collide with CM Punk and it never happened. He was destined to work with Wardlow and it never happened. Um, and I think it then he came back and he was a anti-hero, but basically a babyface, and he had to very abruptly turn heel. And he's going to get to a point where he is the prince who is promised. And I think the Hurt Syndicate are going to get him there. And I think that in 5 years' time, he will have at least one more world title reign under his belt. He will have a myriad of great matches, huge moments, huge main events at huge stadiums in huge places. And I think he's going to be arguably the best wrestler alive.
I don't think I could add a whole lot to that. I think you pretty much laid out the entire case for MJF, and I agree. I think he is a guy who was a victim of unfortunate circumstances, sort of like with like Adam Page, where um, he was supposed to do certain things and they didn't pan out for one reason or the other. The entire Adam Cole MJF friendship thing really hurt him and brought him down. It turned him into kind of a joke. The whole him getting screwed over by the devil, the Undisputed Kingdom, that whole thing, blew up and didn't go anywhere. So I think MJF is due for a rebound. Because like I said, with Adam Page, if you'd asked me about this a year ago, I would have said Adam Page is too high. Um, and with MJF, he's obviously still young. He's got the total package. He's got everything you want. He's one of the best talkers in the business. He's a really good wrestler. He's a guy who he doesn't go out there and do a crazy style, and if he does do some of those crazy moves, he doesn't do them very often. So I think his body will hold up. Um, and yeah, I mean, obviously we'll see where things go with the Hurt Syndicate and beyond, but he's got the most potential to really improve and really get back to being, that guy, to really being the guy who on all of those lists were of guys who would you start a wrestling company with, he was number one on every single one of them unanimously. Um, so it's provided he's booked well and provided they do it right and he doesn't hit any more speed bumps. Yeah, I think he'll get back to being deserving of being one of the best guys in AEW.
The only caveat I'd like to add is I think his return in 2024 was curtailed by the fact that he was gone frequently to shoot movies, and I think it hampered. I think ultimately it hampered his program with Will Ospreay because I don't think it was as long as they would have liked it to have been. And then his program with Daniel Garcia and Adam Cole were greatly affected by his obligations outside of wrestling. And if he continues to commit his time to acting, which as of this year he is not, but if he does, I think it could affect his place on this list because it'll affect his standing in the company and what he's able to do. Um, I think a wrestler is their ability is reflective of the feuds they're in, the matches they have, and less so the titles they win. It's really a reflection of your body of work. And if he's not there all the time, his body of work is going to suffer, and so will his standing on this list, so to speak. Um, Number one, come on, it's the aerial assassin, Will Ospreay, 37 years old in 2030. Will Ospreay is both simultaneously, I think, probably the best wrestler alive right now, and has a considerable amount of room to improve. Um, and I say the best wrestler alive because every show he's on, he can get in the ring and have the best match. I don't give 5-star ratings out freely. I think it's something that is seldom seen in the wrestling world, and he's had two of them this year, in my opinion. One against Kyle Fletcher at Revolution, and one at Double or Nothing against Hangman Adam Page. He can work with anyone, and will undoubtedly have a host of 4.5, 4.75, or 5-star matches between now and 2030. And on the flip side, he has room to improve in his selling, in his use of moderation, in his promo, and I think he will inevitably turn heel and show his range as a heel on American television. Um, If I made this list in 10 years, I don't think he'd be number one. I don't think he'd be in the top five, maybe. But in 5 years, I think 37 years old, he's going to be well, I think he's gonna be the best wrestler alive. I mean, there's no hyperbole you can use other than that. I think he's gonna be the best.
Yeah, I love Will Ospreay too a lot. He's one of my favorites to watch. And with that said, I said before I thought Hangman should be number one on this list, and I will keep that sentiment. Um, and I would move Ospreay down no lower than three, possibly at two, but somewhere in that top three range. Um, and I think it's because of, for one thing, for me, the promos. I feel like the accent can sometimes really hinder him on that, even though he has a lot of passion, and in those promos, you feel like he's really talking from the heart. I think that's really good, but I feel like the accent can really hurt some of his promos. And two, like I said about Swerve earlier on in the list, Will Ospreay, he wrestles a pretty crazy style. He is not afraid to throw caution to the wind. And those big moves, those huge dives off the cage, those backflips off the top of the bleachers, all of those things add up. And while Ospreay is still right now one of the best, if not the best wrestlers in the world, and he still can go and he can still do those crazy things, those things don't get easier as you get older. And we're talking about him pushing 40, but in 5 years. So, you know, I don't know if I would have him as high just because of those things. I think that would limit him. Um, in opposition to Hangman, who I feel like, as I said, and as you said too, is the most well-rounded guy in the company. Um, is a guy who will do some crazy things in the ring, no question. Um, but obviously, he is not nicknamed the aerial assassin like Will Ospreay is, and Will Ospreay is called the aerial assassin because he is not afraid to use his body like a video game character in Assassin's Creed. He is a guy who will do anything. He will do those crazy moves, and I would be afraid that those things would add up to him quickly because he is probably one of on this list. He's one of the guys who does that the most, and he's also a guy who he wrestles almost every show. Um, and in the past year or whatever, has wrestled more than once on the same show. So that amount of work really can build up, and it's not like kind of how the guys were back in like the territory days where they didn't do that crazy type of style. Now they would have hardcore matches and things like that, but they're not near the athlete that Will Ospreay is. And when you're an athlete like that and you're doing all that stuff, the body can break down and you can have freak injuries, and those injuries can add up. And I'm hoping I'm wrong. I hope that Ospreay is able to have a full, long, healthy career in AEW, and I feel like he will be. And like I said, I would not move him any lower than three because I think he will be one of those guys, one of those main guys in AEW. But for the purposes of this list, I think I would move him down and move Hangman up to one. I think you muted my friend.
I'm not good at that. Uh, I'd hate to argue with Hangman Adam Page, who I love, but my one rebuttal in 2015, do you think AJ Styles was the best wrestler alive?
2015 AJ Styles. I mean, yeah, probably yeah.
He was 37 years old in 2015. Will Ospreay would be 37 years old in 2030.
Yeah. No, I mean, I
Um,
don't. I don't think Osprey is going to be bad. I don't think he's going to be not worthy of talking about. I just think you combine that with the addition of also for me like the accent with the promos really just
sure.
I him that in addition to the potential injury, I think would be my reasoning for pushing him down the list.
Understood. Understood. Before we move on to the women's list, any notable omissions that you think I just missed the boat on?
I don't I don't think so. I can't. think of anybody off the top of my head that I'm missing. Anybody in the comments, please feel free to let us know if there's somebody that we're not thinking of. But I think this is a good indication of all those guys, and I think it's notable that out of the 10 guys, 8 of them are AEW guys. I think that really, again, goes back to our point about the men's division in both companies and where they're at. Um, but no, I mean, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that we're missing from this particular list.
Yeah, I guess the honorable mentions for me would be Vikingo, which I didn't choose for a number of reasons I don't really want to get into, but he could potentially be a guy that you would rank up there. Kaito Kiyomiya, who's in Noah, who has worked with New Japan and I think will inevitably land in New Japan and become, one of the aces of that company. Shota Umino, Yota Tsuji, two other guys who are, I think candidates for the ace title in New Japan who could be on this list, but I'm worried about New Japan's health and its future, and I don't think it's in a good spot right now for a myriad of reasons. And I'd be reticent to put any of those guys on the list. From the CMLL side, Templario, Mascara, Dorado 2.0, not Junior. Those guys I considered, but in any event, we'll move on to the women's list. Um, this is more when I was speaking on the international side, the sort of the outskirts of wrestling. This is more where this is going to manifest. I think for the most part, the best men's wrestlers typically gravitate towards the biggest companies. I mean, there's some independent guys I could have considered, but um, there are, a lot of young independent guys are moving up to AEW or WWE because of the ID program, because AEW is keen on eyeing independent talent. So I think the kind of international side of this or the independent side of this is going to manifest here more than anything, because women's wrestling is quite frankly just more developed in other parts of the world than it is in America. Um, Starting at number 10, Jordan, Mariah May, who I suppose we could say is a WWE wrestler now. All
Yeah,
reports indicate to her signing there, uh, according to Sean Ross Sapp, imminently, if she is not already. Um, Mariah May will be 31 years old in 2030. Um, the reason why she is as low on this list as she is, and might have been higher if she stayed in AEW, is that it's a stacked division in WWE, and it's going to be hard to distance yourself from the competition. But I think of all the women on this list that are from the WWE, I have I have a lot of belief in her because she can improve a lot in the ring, and I think her style fits the WWE well. And on the microphone, she's ace. She's I think entering that company and will be as good as anyone else is on the microphone already. She has a natural way of cutting a promo that is professional and eloquent and will um, really light up television.
yeah, I think this is a good spot for her. I think, um, like I said before, Mariah May is really good. She was one of my favorite wrestlers in AEW. I thought there was a lot more potential for her there, and for whatever reason, whether it was reasons on her part or reasons on Tony Khan and the bookings part, it never manifested anything past Tony Storm. Um, but yeah, I think this is a good spot because she will be one of the better ones, and she has the potential to to break out and do something big, or she might kind of be in that mid card. I don't really know where she'll fit in just because of the amount of talent in that company right now on the women's side. So yeah, it's there's a lot of potential there, but yeah, I think initially my gut feeling is that 10 might be low, but at the same point, like you said, because of all the talent there, I wouldn't feel comfortable pushing her any higher because she's still not there. We still don't know what she's going to do. Um, so yeah, I think 10's a good spot.
Yeah, and I think in 5 years' time, if she's held the AEW Women's World Championship and one of the top either the WWE Women's Championship or the Women's World Championship, whatever it may be. If she held the top title in both companies, that would be pretty impressive. Um, but there are a lot of great women's wrestlers in the world. So moving on to number nine, Roxanne Perez, the prodigy. In 5 years' time, she'll be 28 years old. I'm assuming she'll have held multiple world titles at that point. Roxanne's ability in the ring is undeniable. Her ability to grow is undeniable. She's proven that over the last 4 years of her career. Uh, she started when she was really young, was trained by Booker T, and has steadily improved. And while I think maybe she went to WWE a little too young, I think she could have improved more if she'd stayed as a freelancer. Not necessarily signing with AEW, but if she'd stayed in Ring of Honor and worked in Japan, I think she could have improved more. But if she can improve on the microphone, she's going to be a force in the WWE. I don't think that's deniable at this point. And at 28 years old, she'll be the same age that Rhea Ripley currently is, that Tony Storm currently is. I think she'll be right there in terms of one of the top talents in the world.
Yeah, I mean, she has a lot of potential. And I mean, it's crazy to think that in 5 years she'll only be 28. I mean, it feels like she's been in WWE for a while now. Um, so again, I think another women's wrestler with a lot of potential. Um, but I don't know if her size is going to limit her ceiling in WWE. And again, I think she's been there for a while, and the crowds are behind her, so I think that will help her case to be pushed as somebody to be taken seriously as a potential main eventer. Um, but I don't know. I don't. It's hard to say. I think again with the potential, nine is a good spot. And in WWE, the women's division, it seems like they really have a handle on it, as opposed to the men's division. So I think her chances are good. But yeah, I think nine is a good spot just because of the potential's there, but we're not sure how it's going to play out.
My number eight, Azume, who's a Stardom talent. She's the current New Japan Strong Women's Champion. She didn't beat Mercedes Moné, but she won the title from Mercedes Moné. Um, Azume is currently 22 years old and already has over a decade of wrestling experience. So I want to just throw that out there. She already has over a decade of experience and she's 22 years old. In 5 years, she'll be 27. And whether she's in Stardom or Marigold or AEW or wherever or WWE, wherever that may be, I think in 5 years' time, the level she's at in the ring is already high. I think it's going to be exorbitant. I think she's going to be one of the top women's wrestlers in the world. And there's a possibility that she's too low on this list, but I'm having not won a world title yet. I'm confident that seven or at eight is a good place.
Yeah, I don't know anything about her, so sounds good. Um,
She wrestled Tony Storm in a four-way eliminator match a few weeks ago. That's probably you would know her from. She was against Mina Shirakawa and Sky Blue.
okay, all right. Yeah, I don't. As far as like stuff outside of WWE and AEW, I don't know a whole lot about like the women in Stardom and like Marigold and places like that. So I'm not gonna have that strong of an opinion on her. But I mean, the fact that she's already got a decade of experience and she's 22 is insane. So that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. But yeah, I mean, if she's got all that, then yeah, I think eight's a good spot for her. I'll defer to your knowledge on this.
Yeah, well, and I go back to, obviously being in the WWE and to a lesser extent AEW is, I think a lot of people see it as being in the big leagues, but wrestling isn't a sport; it's entertainment. And an underground band or a band of limited relevance can have a great album, a greater album than you know, a huge rock band or a star like a Taylor Swift or you know, you know what I mean. I mean, you can be of a lesser profile and have great quality content come out, and it's more valuable at the end of the day. And if, like I said, your ranking on this list is reflective of your body of work and the matches with which you produce. And I think she's going to have quite a catalog in the next 5 years and someone who's really going to impress a lot of people and dominate the Joshi scene. Number seven on this list is Saya Kamitani, who's the current World of Stardom champion and the leader of the Hate faction. For a long time, she was a babyface. As of the last year and a half, she's turned heel and become a huge star in Stardom, obviously holding the world title, being the top figure there, the final boss, as it were. Um, she'll be 33 years old in 2030. So she is, she's maybe she's at her apex now, but I think she's right there in that spectrum where in the next 5 years she's going to do a lot of great things, hold that title, if not, I think for a little while longer, but maybe once more. And I think in the landscape of Joshi right now, she could go to Marigold, and there's interplay there. They have a relationship quite like AEW and WWE, where they're the two top companies. And she could go to Marigold and be a top star too within the next 5 years. There's room for her to improve, or to stay at the level she's at in anyway. Number six, Tiffany Stratton, who will be 31 years old in 2030. Um, she could easily be higher on this list. I think on the microphone she can improve. In the ring, I think she's about as good as she's going to be. She's a great athlete, great psychology. Um, and right now she's a baby face, but that could always change. The fans are pretty fair weather. What do you think about Tiffany, Jordan?
Um, I mean, to me, I think I would probably have her higher. Um, even without knowing who else is coming up. Um, I just think she's kind of positioned to be, it seems, one of the top women in WWE for years to come. Um, Maybe sort of in that Charlotte Flair type of spot, even though I'm not saying she's Charlotte Flair, but she's really good in the ring. Obviously, the mic skills can improve, but she's not bad on the mic. Um, she has a gimmick that she's really bought into and really honed into something. And I think she's got some more top quality opponents to face. Some more matches to come, and obviously the women coming in now from the NXT call ups and different things like that only strengthen the division and make it that much better for her. So I think she's positioned to be the top woman in there for years to come. So I think I would have her higher.
Yeah, all fair points. My number five is Willow Nightingale, AEW. Will be 36 years old in 2030, which is either, at the outside or at the end of her prime. But I think Willow Nightingale will inevitably win the AEW Women's World Championship. I think she's bound to have a lot of great matches between now and then. And someone who's already had a really great career and has a lot of upside still, just in terms of her positioning in the company. She's not been pushed in that regard yet, and I think when it happens, she's going to be a huge baby face, a huge unifying force for that division, and someone who can have a lot of great matches with a lot of great heels in that company. Um, and personally, maybe my bias is I have a huge bias towards Willow because I think she's one of the best women's wrestlers alive, and I really believe in her potential. But I think she can do a lot of great things between now and then. And she's ready. She's ready now. So if they do put the title on Mercedes Moné, I think that's the perfect person to transition to after that. What do you think about Willow, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I like Willow a lot too. I think she is the prototypical baby face. She's got the personality for it. She's just, the fans love her. She's one of the women in AEW that the fans really can get behind. Um, I think the only thing I would say is she hasn't gotten the opportunity yet, and I would have thought she would have gotten it by now. Um, and I think because AEW, the women's division is just kind of in a weird place right now, where the fans aren't really invested in the division as a whole. Only certain people, I think, could potentially hold her back a little bit. Um, but I mean, I would love to see them put some more stock in her, put a little more momentum behind her. Um, And yeah, I think she's great too. But I think because of the limitations of the women's division in AEW right now, I think I would have some people ahead of her. Um, but having said that, I think she's great. I think she's got a great future, and I would love to see her get her opportunities. But I think I would have her lower right now, just because I think the women's division in AEW is a little weak, or it's in a weird place. Maybe not weak. Weak's not is not the best word for it, but I think the WWE is a little more structured, and I think some of the WWE women would I think I would have ahead of her just because of that.
Yeah, I can see all those things. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in being the top AEW women's wrestler because you are going to dominate most of the programming, at least as things currently stand in the way they promote women's wrestling. But I totally understand what you're saying. She might be a little high, but I have faith in her ability and what she'll accomplish between now and then. Number four, Utami Hayashishita, former World of Stardom champion, Stardom superstar, and now she's the Marigold World Champion. Phenomenal worker. In 5 years, she'll only be 31 years old, so still young, still at the peak of her powers. And like I said, there's a lot of mobility in the Joshi world. She could go back to Stardom. She could go to WWE. She could go to AEW. She's her career is still ahead of her, and she has a lot of room for to improve. And I think she's going to hold that Marigold title for a while. And if not, I think she'll hold it again if she doesn't hold it for a while. Because she's a perennial main event player. Um, Number three is Sari. She's a freelancer. She also promotes her own shows called Surrealism. I call her the cottage industry because I think that in the world of Joshi, she's a drawing power unlike any other. And I think in the ring right now, I would probably say she's the best women's wrestler in the world. Um, she constantly has match of the year candidate matches. This year, her match against Meiko Satomura, and it was just phenomenal. And I think if it weren't for some of the high highs of AEW this year, I think it would be my match of the year. In 5 years, she'll be 34 years old. So, like I've been saying, kind of only on the farther end of her prime. But Io Sky is 35 right now, so I mean, it's not like it's inconceivable to be a great wrestler at 35. I think Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair probably peaked at 35. So she'll still be great then. And if it weren't for maybe some other women who are younger and have a lot of upside, I think she could probably still be number one in 5 years. Um, Number two, Jordan, Rhea Ripley.
Okay.
Rhea Ripley needs no introduction. The biggest women's
Yeah.
wrestler in WWE, the biggest women's wrestler in America, and maybe the world. Rhea Ripley is only 28 years old, so in 5 years she'll be 33, still in her prime. I'm sure she'll be the most unifying. She'll be the unifying force in that company still. She'll probably still be the most pushed women's wrestler. And I think I don't think maybe the match level will be as high as some other people on this list. I think the cachet will be as high as anyone else's. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a big Rhea Ripley fan. And I think she definitely has room to improve. And I think she will improve, but I think the fact that right now she is one of the biggest wrestlers in the WWE, not men or women's wrestlers overall in the company. She's one of the most pushed wrestlers there. She's the one like on all the promotional stuff. She's constantly on the shows. Um, and I think, whilst I think some people may think that she's too pushed on the shows, I mean, you can't deny every time she comes out, she gets a huge reaction. It's not like she has go away heat or anything like that. It's not like it's the Super Cena of like how things were back when we were kids and the crowd was just tired of John Cena. They're not there yet. Now maybe they will. Maybe they'll get there. I think it will help her that the women's division of WWE is consistently adding talent, and there'll be other people she can work with. Um, because I think that's kind of one of the things that's not helped her is the fact that they haven't let her wrestle anybody else. It's really just been Liv Morgan and then a couple other people kind of randomly. So I think the fact that they're adding more people to the roster, giving her more opponents, I think will help. And then, for her to be the top women's wrestler in the biggest wrestling company in the world that, has all of this, this global reach and is, to me, the better structured women's division out of the two companies. I think she would, for me, she would be number one. Um, and maybe I'm a little biased because I'm just a big fan. Um, and I have a good idea of who's number one. And it's certainly not a bad thing to be the second best. But to me, I think if you're the number one woman on the WWE Women's roster, when their roster is so strong and they have a lot of really big stars, even 5 years from now, I feel like that gives you plenty of credence to be number one in in a list like this.
Yeah, I my problem Rhea is a good wrestler, and I but my problem is that when are you gonna find the Rock to her Austin? Um, Even the Piper to her Hogan, someone who can stand toe to toe with her and consume as much oxygen, someone who the fans are equally as behind as her, or you know, who juxtaposes her that well. I don't think any woman is of her stature right now, and it's I think a lot of the reason why it exacerbates the problem that we feel that she's being booked in the highest position too often. Is because there's just no one that can rival her in her popularity. I think Tiffany Stratton has gotten close, but is still not there yet. And now eventually maybe fans will get tired of her. I don't know. This is kind of the unpredictable element of professional wrestling. But you make a great point. If she's the top women's wrestler in 5 years, which we assume she will be, then it's hard to have anyone else over her outside of, a place like in Japan where women's wrestling is an entity unto itself. But my number one, like you said, it's not hard to predict, is Tony Storm. Um, when I talked to Steve Johnson, I did the interview with him. I asked him, who his favorite wrestlers are now, and he said number one is far and away Tony Storm. And he said that in 50 to 100 years, we're going to be talking about Tony Storm in the same way we talk about Jim Landis or Lou Thesz or Ed Strangler Lewis or Buddy Rogers, et cetera, as a trailblazer, as someone who has changed the format and the prestige of women's wrestling in America. As a character, unparalleled. And I mean, I think there's veritable criticism that maybe the timeless character has run its course. Um, I think maybe it's time that she funnels that charisma into another avenue. But in terms of her work in the ring, her ability on the microphone, and her ability to tell a story, I think she's second to none in American women's wrestling. And I think, that program with Mariah May, while obviously Mariah May carried her weight in that as well as anyone could have, it might not be the best rivalry in women's wrestling history in America, but it's the best program. It's the best point A to point Z feud, right? As a story, it is as good as any has ever been. And I think if she can replicate that with one or two other people between now and the next 5 years and still be on top in that company, that's an incredible body of work. If she can have one more feud like Mariah May's in her career in the next 5 years and still be on top, I think to me, that's the argument right there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tony Storm is clearing away the best women's wrestler in AEW. Um, and while yeah, to me, I'm kind of I've worn a little bit thin on the timeless thing. Um, it makes her unique and it makes her, the crowd's lover. Um, and I mean, just getting the crowd behind you is something that, you have to celebrate, especially in AEW, where in a lot of cases they don't invest heavily in the women's wrestlers, only certain ones. And Tony Storm is clearing away the number one. And I think in this particular discussion, I think it's clear that Tony Storm and Rhea Ripley are the the two women that you're going to talk about in this type of argument. Where in 5 years it's going to be those two, one and two, and wherever they end up is where they end up. Um, but for me, I think kind of like we were talking about earlier with when the men's wrestlers in WWE, I feel like Tony Storm is gonna it's gonna eventually kind of limit her to what she can do because the talent pool there I don't feel is as it's not as strong as WWE, and the structure of the women's division has been really wonky, and I feel like that's going to limit her, and eventually the fans are going to kind of I'm not gonna say they're gonna get tired of her, but they're gonna kind of be like, what else is there? What else are we supposed to invest in? Like, what opponent is gonna be able to challenge her? Um, what big presence are you gonna have for her? And I think it's hard because Tony Storm sucks up so much of the oxygen out of the room that in WWE, the fans are clearly behind Rhea, but they're also behind a lot of the women. The women's division WWE is a very heavily invested in. The crowds love them. Um, and I think Rhea when we were talking about before with her being booked so heavily, I think now you have a lot of talent and you have a lot of people that could challenge her. And I think Tiffany Stratton could be somebody who could kind of be that, you know, rock to her Austin or things like that. I think there are people there who could occupy that spot. I think it's just about now again, it goes back to the booking and making if they book it well, then I think she will be number one. But I just think for me, looking at where Rhea is right now, and she's clear in a way the most popular woman in the WWE. And she kind of has that aura, kind of like Tony Storm has. Both of them, they have that aura about them where the crowds love them. But I think there's more potential for Rhea to have really good feuds with really quality opponents, and you have that structure there at WWE that they don't in AEW. And I think eventually that's going to be the really deciding factor between these two.
Before we sign off, and all good points, by the way, all valid points. Before we sign off, any notable omissions you think I whiffed on?
Um, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I want to say Bianca just because she's so popular right now. I mean, I think she'll be in her early 40s in 2030. So, maybe that says something. But I mean, she's so popular right now and she's really good. And maybe it's because the booking for her has kind of not been that great to the point where she wouldn't be ahead of anybody here. And maybe her age will play a factor. But I mean, you know, I think she's in phenomenal shape. I don't think she's going to diminish that badly in 5 years. So she's somebody I would have in consideration to potentially put on this. I mean, all 10 of these women are, clearly very good and very full of lots of potential. So, but as just off the top of my head, I think Bianca's somebody that pops into my head. Maybe Io. She's obviously well liked by the fans. It appears that Triple H really likes her a lot and wants to invest in her. So she's somebody else maybe who you could throw in there. Um, but other than that, no, I don't know. Maybe Stephanie Vacour. I don't know how old she is.
I think she's
Um,
32, I think.
so I mean, she's one of the more popular women in the company right now.
Yeah.
The crowds, I mean, are really really like her a lot. Again, she's somebody else that you could put in there, but it's hard. There's women's wrestling right now is pretty strong. Obviously in WWE it is, and even in AEW where I was just talking about how it's not that well structured. There's still great women's wrestlers there, and there's potential there.
Hmm.
Um, and if things improve and if things change, then like I said, Tony Storm could be that number one. I think it's just it speaks to how much things have changed from the time when you and I were watching as kids with women's wrestling to where it is now, and it's a whole other level.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's changed a lot. Yeah, the notable or the honorable mentions, I should say, on my end, people I considered were Stephanie Vaquer, um, was a huge one. Someone I went back and forth on who just narrowly missed the list. Um, Chris Statlander, another big one.
Oh
Who
yeah, I forgot Chris. Yeah.
Chris could have made the list. She narrowly left off. In the Japanese side of things, Starlight Kid, who's in Stardom, someone I considered. Um, I mean, obviously Julia's in WWE. She's someone I considered who narrowly missed the list. Um, you know, Julia Hart is 23 years old. I think by the time she's 28, she's going to be awesome, but it's a little bit more difficult to see that vision. I think maybe more so in 10 years she'll be a top star than she would be in five. In
Yeah.
Mexico, Persephone in CMLL, who I think is only 25 years old,
Mm.
is going to be a star one day, but not quite positioned there yet. And like I said, it's hard to envision her being a top 10 woman in the next 5 years. She might go somewhere else and that could change, but anyways, yeah. Let us know what you guys think about my list. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, any people that you think I were glaring omissions that I should have added to this list, and I'm crazy for missing one. Um, let me know what you think was right, was wrong, what you think about Jordan's rebuttals and his opinions on the list and what he thought. Like the video, subscribe to the channel and share with your friends. We'd love to see you return next week and see some new faces too. So, talk to him, Jordan.
Top dogs out.